Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for His Worship the Mayor and colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. Please remain standing for praise by my chaplain, Reverend Martin Freeman, before we start the meeting.
Let us pray. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount like an eagle, and they can run and not weary. And so, Lord, we commit ourselves before you this morning. For the mayor, the chief executive, for Her Majesty the Queen, the Prime Minister, for the First Minister, for us here, members of this council. We pray, Lord, for wisdom from on high, for tolerance for each other, for patience to speak, for understanding to prevail, that we who live in Tovan may live in prosperity and peace. This is our prayers. We ask this through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, I'd like to remind you all that this council meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so we're all on camera. Please be aware that you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. There's no need for members to stand. Cameras are focused on people sitting down, and please remember to speak into your microphones. Right, we welcome the use of the Welsh language at public meetings. I have not received notice that either members or members of the public wish to use Welsh today, and therefore the meeting will be conducted in English only. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting today, councillors, officers, members of the press and public, and anyone else attending, and anyone watching via webcast. Please, can all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent? If there is an emergency alarm, follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic Car Park. If you have any motions or amendments during the meeting, I will need them to be clear, please, before we go to the vote. We move straight on to item agenda 1, which is attendance. The attendance register is going around the room. Please, can all members sign it and move it on. Item 2, apologies for absence. Richard, do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Seaborn, Councillor Smith, Councillor Tomlinson, Councillor Furzer and Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Members, any other apologies? No? Now we move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Monitoring Officer, do we have any advice for members, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No advice on the basis that there are very general and strategic items on the agenda together, so I'm not expecting that members have any personal interest to declare this time. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Members, have you got any interest to declare? If you can think of any, can you make sure that they're written down on the normal forms, please? Now we go on to item 4, which is minutes, the 1st of March 2016. Can someone move that the minutes are correct? Thank you. Are we all agreed? Yes? Thank you, members. The minutes are agreed. Go on to item number 5, update on actions. Members, the updates on what has been done to implement our previous decisions start on page 29 of the agenda. Are there any comments or questions? No? Is everyone happy to note the updates? Thank you, members. They noted. We go on to item 6, which is receipt of petitions. We have 1 petition today. Miss Woodland, can you please come down to the front, please, and present your petition, then hand it to me.
Good morning, Mr Mayor. On the 12th of March, a lady was hurt due to a van parked outside the hairdressers on Blenheim Road in Cwmbran. He was parked on double yellow lines, half on the road and half on the pavement, which resulted in a very nasty fall. We, the undersigned, are concerned citizens who urge our leaders to act now to higher the railings and lengthen them towards the bus stop with a proper path alongside it to help prevent this from happening again. Thank you.
Thank you. The petition contains 159 signatures. We agreed to refer the petition to the Executive Member for Neighbourhoods for him to consider, respond and report back. Thank you, members. Thank you, Ms Woodland. Right, we go straight on to item number 7, which is public question time. We have one public question today. Mr Simpson, can you please come down to the front, please, and ask your question?
Good morning, Mr Mayor. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to ask a question this morning. It's actually on behalf of a resident, but like the good leader, Jeremy Corbyn, I'm going to ask it on behalf of them because they're too worried about asking it themselves. The subways in Greenmeadow are in a terrible state and have been for 2 years. Some work has been carried out, clearing the mud, silt and left by the flooding of the 22nd of May. However, the lights in the subway remain broken and haven't worked for many years. I'm told back in 2003 they were broken. Are there any plans to put lighting in the subway, as in other wards, are lit using the new lights which are vandal-proof? Considering no attempt has been made to put the new fittings in these subways since they were built, what plans does TCBC propose to maintain public safety in the area?
Thank you, Mr Simpson. Councillor Kiernan, can you respond, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think you recall that a similar question to this was answered in September's Council. In that response, it was noted that there was a pattern of damage to subways, including litter, smashed glass, vandalism to lighting units. It was further noted that this damage, when known, would have been considered and action taken as appropriate. There are a number of subways in the Greenmeadow ward. Some have never had lighting in, some have had lighting in, but they've been vandalised on a number of occasions, and some have lighting in which has been maintained as such they remain lit. Equally, the cleansing of the subways is taking place. We continue to attempt to improve our area. We have a community project proposed to create artwork for subways in Greenmeadow, in an attempt to both improve the subways and encourage ownership to hopefully reduce vandalism. We would have started this by now, but unfortunately the weather has gone against us on that. So that's my answer, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kiernan. First supplementary, Mr Simpson.
Yes, my supplementary question follows on from the original question. You are correct, Mr Cunningham. I did ask this question a number of months ago. You say that the lights have been repaired after they've been vandalised. I've got specific photographs that quite clearly show that the lights, since they've been fitted...
Question, please. We don't need a statement, just a question. A supplementary question, please. Thank you.
The lights, since they've been fitted, originally in the subways, have never had vandal-proof lights fitted in there. Like with other subways down in St Giles, the vandal-proof lights have been fitted. Why haven't the lights been fitted in Greenmeadow in an attempt to stop vandalism and to secure public safety?
Well, I don't think there's any such thing as a vandal-proof light, because if you can't break it, they'll burn them anyway, or they have been burned. But as I've said on previous occasions, the lights in other areas were put in as a result of a Welsh Assembly grant under the Safe Routes in the Community. And so they were grant funded. We haven't got the finance, obviously, to do all the subways, because we've got to run about, well, nearly 40, if you count all the borough. But we're doing them when we have, and when you say that some of them haven't been, I did say that, some lighting has been maintained, but not all lighting. There's some in there that never had lighting for many, many, many years.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Thank you, Mr Simpson. You return to the public gallery, please. Thank you. Well, we move on to item 8, which is announcements. Leader, do you have any announcements today, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's my great pleasure to welcome you today, two ladies who are both members of St John's Ambulance and who have both recently been awarded honours in the Queen's New Year's Honours List. Firstly, Amanda Jolliffe, who lives in Waynfelling, has been awarded the British Empire Medal for Voluntary Services for First Aid and through St John's in her role as Badger leader in Griffithstown. Secondly, Jane Collier, who lives in New Inn and has been awarded an MBE for Voluntary Services to First Aid through St John's in her role as Nursing Advisor for Wales. I'm delighted to welcome Amanda and Jane here this morning to receive the congratulations on behalf of myself, the Deputy Leader, the Mayor and all members. Would they come down? Right then, the next announcement I've got is I wanted to take this opportunity to say goodbye and thank you to Dana Einan, a talented and hard-working officer. Dana is moving to pastures new. She's moving to the Isle of Man and taken on the position of Director of Environment and Regeneration. Dana has been with the Council since December 2003. I think I'll be contacting her to see if I can have a week's holiday over there. Dana has been with us since that time, highlighted in her time in Torvine, including starting her career as Head of Democracy. From there, she moved to become the Blenavon Project Manager to the new school and community campus in Blenavon. She took on other projects, including Nant Callan School, and I can never say this, Gwynthlew, and so her title was changed to Special Projects Manager. Dana started with Neighbourhood Services in July 2011 as Head of Property. In May 2012, Dana took on waste and street scene, as well as was asked to undertake a fundamental review of street scene, as well as the skinny bins rollout. Members will remember that quite clearly. We are sorry to see her go, but I'm sure you will all join me and wish Dana the best. And I'm in first with the request for a holiday over there. Come on up, Dana.
Is that all your announcements now, Lito? Thank you, Leader. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements to make?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to, on behalf of my fellow officers, add to the Leader's sentiments with respect to Dana. She's been an outstanding officer and all her colleagues will miss her very much. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Right, we move now on to item number 9, which is Torfane's Strategic Equality Plan. Kate Williams, Equalities, Cohesion and Community Safety Manager, can you please present your report?
Good morning. I'm here this morning to present two items in one report. It's the Torvine Strategic Equality Plan 2016 to 2020, and also to provide the Council with the annual report for 2014 to 15. The recommendation is that we ask that the Council approves the Strategic Equality Plan 2016 to 2020 for publication, and notes the contents and approves the 2014 to 2015 Annual Progress Report on the Council's Strategic Equality Plan for publication. Throughout the report, you'll see some of the background information with regards to the Equality Act in 2010. This places the statutory public sector duty upon local authorities to consider all individuals when carrying out their day-to-day work, including developing policy, delivering services, and in relation to their own employees. The Act requires public bodies to have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, advance equality of opportunity, and foster good relations between different people when carrying out their activities and functions. The Equality Act 2010 places a statutory duty on all public local authorities to develop and publish a strategic equalities plan known as the SEP, and this is to be done every 4 years. Our last equalities plan was published in 2012, and this was known as the Equalities Promise. I should be aware this plan is now due for renewal and should be published in April 2016. The public sector equality duty requires that all public authorities covered under the specific duties in Wales should also produce an annual equality report. On March the 16th, this was presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. They received the report and made some useful recommendations. One of those was to establish an equalities working group, develop some e-learning equalities training, look at clearer indicators based on outcomes, develop more accessible links to equalities on the Torvine website, and look at an action plan for each objective. These recommendations have been considered, and in consultation with the executive member, we're looking to move those forward. Consultation for the Strategic Equality Plan 2016 to 2020 took place between December 2015 and February 2016. There was various processes of engagement, and we consulted with heads of service, executive members, third sector organisations, Gwent Police, Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, other equalities and community cohesion managers in the local authorities, registered social landlords, and there was also consultation on MySay. 5.3 is the current equality objectives, but they can also be viewed in Appendix 3 as a comparison with the new objectives. It was noted from the annual report that the Council's progress in relation to its statutory responsibilities under the Equality Act is both compliant and satisfactory in relation to a number of the equality objectives that were set in the original Strategic Equality Plan. And there has been significant progress in a number of key areas, and they're highlighted from 5.5 onwards. A lot of research was carried out into looking at renewing or updating the objectives for the next Strategic Equality Plan. Items that were considered were Welsh Government's priorities. We also looked at the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and any other legislation that has come in that might affect the plan. We looked at the Council's third corporate plan has been considered while setting the equality objectives, and it remains a key objective for the Council as highlighted in Priority 3 of the corporate plan. The amendments for the objectives, feedback from the consultation was taken on board, looking at new legislation and collaboration with other local authorities, has identified some proposed future strategic equality objectives. Some will remain the same, some are amended, and there are some additional objectives to be considered. The amended objectives have been enhanced rather than reduced to reflect a council that is leading the way in equality and diversity for its staff and community. 7.4 are the new proposed objectives. And as I said, they can be viewed in Appendix 3 to look at a comparison from the previous. There are no identifiable risks associated with the recommendations of this report. The impact, the proposed amended objectives for 2016 to 2020 should have a positive effect on those living and working in Torfaen. Those objectives that had been enhanced take into account the wider wellbeing issues of staff in the community. Mental health was highlighted as part of the Council's commitment to the Time to Change Well campaign, and that's been highlighted in this as well. Community cohesion related issues are being promoted to reflect the Council's ongoing commitment to supporting the relocation of vulnerable people and to improve community cohesion by promoting good relations between Gypsy and travellers and the settled communities in the borough. Community safety objectives have been enhanced to include a reduction of the levels of received or perceived incidences of identity-based abuse, bullying, harassment and violence, hate crime and hate incidents in Torfaen. An additional objective to improve the engagement and participation of underrepresented groups within services of the local authority will ensure that we as a council are monitoring community engagement to assist with targeting ongoing services and programmes towards all groups in the community. There was also an additional monitoring objective to ensure the Council complies with its statutory duties under Equalities and Welsh Language legislation. And this will be achieved through a commitment to publish annual reports, equality policy impact assessments, and assess the number of complaints that contain inequalities or Welsh language elements. So action to be taken following the decision would be to publicise the Strategic Equality Plan and also to publicise the Annual Report 2014 to 15. So, in conclusion, this report is to provide the Council with the oversight of the Council's progress during 2014 and 15 on the Strategic Equality Plan. As I've said, many of the objectives remain the same, and those that have been amended or introduced as an additional objective should only enhance the Council's commitment to support equality and diversity. The draft Strategic Equality Plan 2016 to 20 has been updated to demonstrate the Council's commitment to meeting the Equality Act 2010. It demonstrates links to other legislation covering Welsh language, human rights issues, and therefore supports 3 of the 7 aims under the Welsh Government's Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So again, the recommendation that's been asked today is that the Council approves the Strategic Equality Plan 2016 to 2020 for publication and notes the contents and approves the 2014 to 2015 annual progress on the Council's Strategic Equality Plan.
Thank you, Kate. Members, any questions, please? Deputy Leader.
Just like to thank Kate and Lyndon and the other officers who have worked on this plan. I very much welcome the point that's made in 6.4 in the report about the consideration that's been given to the 3rd corporate plan that we've put together over the past year, especially when she mentions priority 3, because I think the wording in there, especially at the end about reducing inequality, has been very carefully chosen by members, because we are very much of the opinion that equality is not just about groups of society, but about socio-economic inequality and the impact that has on people and their ability to access services, to access justice as well. So that's very welcome, taking this forward.
Thank you. Do you want to say something, Leader? Or?
All right. No, I would endorse Anthony's view. Well done.
Oh, thank you. All right. So, Councillor Morby, then Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, like the Deputy Leader, I wish to endorse the report, which I think actually does dovetail in very well with our corporate plan, particularly like the fact that you get a sense from reading this that we as a council care about our employees, which is most important, but also we care about the society within Torfaen and wish to see it become fairer and more equal in all aspects. And hopefully everybody would endorse that. Thank you.
Thank Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I'd like to endorse what everybody else has said as well. We actually had a very good scrutiny session on this, and I think members of the scrutiny committee, all the aspects that were raised at scrutiny, especially points raised by Kate and Lyndon, were very much taken on board and put back. And I think most of the aspects of what we said, as you said in your presentation, were taken on board, which has led to, I think, a very constructive way with everybody involved. And I'd like to commend it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burnett, then I've got Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, with the other colleagues, I endorse this thoroughly. I'm just reading through it, and on page 62, and it's about harassment within the workplace towards the employees. I hope that everybody gets a copy of this, because of some of the cases I've known within this council of harassment and bullying within the offices, and not much support for some of the cases. I just hope everybody's reading this within the offices, and if any complaints come forward, I hope they're dealt with respectfully and sympathetically, as I've known some cases be not dealt with efficiently or sympathetically. I just hope this does the job today for the people that are out there. And I hope people are listening to this in the offices today and understand what's in place for them and the support there will be for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daniels.
Yeah, I'd just like to endorse the report and thank Kate and Lyndon and their team for all their hard work on it. And just following on from Councillor Hunt's point about the socio-economic aspect of things, I think we've made decent inroads on that. When we look at DFG's disabled facility grants, the waiting time has reduced significantly over the years. The NEETs, the number of young people not in education, training or elsewhere, has reduced, and we continue to monitor that to make sure that that's sustainable. Welfare reform, we've been working incredibly hard on this to ensure that the most vulnerable are protected, and as we know, disabled people tend to be disproportionately affected by welfare reform, so we're alert to that and we continue to work towards that to make sure that they're not, that the damage is minimised really. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on a point that Councillor Burnett made earlier on. I think it's scandalous, actually, to make a comment as you did about bullying in the workplace, and we don't deal with it effectively. Now, this meeting is being webcast. I mean, that could get out to the public that we're not dealing with bullying within the workplace effectively, and I don't know any that we're not. Or I don't know any circumstances that we are not dealing with it effectively. So I wouldn't like that to get out. But if you're talking about bullying in relation to cyberbullying, etc., in relation to members, now that's a different case. Because I know, I don't do Facebook. Let me make that clear to everybody. I do not do Facebook. And I do have reports come back to me about what certain individuals are saying about me on Facebook. But it doesn't worry me because I don't watch it. But there is a certain amount of cyberbullying going on against our elected members here. But I do take exception with the fact about bullying in the workplace that's not being dealt with effectively.
Your Chief Executive.
Yeah, similarly to Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Burnett, I am very concerned that you've made that statement. I don't know of any cases of bullying that haven't been dealt with sympathetically and appropriately. If you do know of any, please let me know as Chief Executive and I'll look into them.
Right, I will come to you on that, Alison. There are a few people in here who do know about some of the cases that were brought to my attention. Councillor Cunningham might not know about them because they weren't under his remit, but other people do know about them. If you would, I would talk to you about them, and you will know about them as well. So I'll talk to you on a different note to that, okay?
Well, thank you. As Head of Paid Service, I am the correct person to speak to, and I do need to know about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any more questions now before we... Right. Okay, then, the recommendation is on page 38 of your agenda. We are asked to approve the Strategic Equality Plan for 2016 to 2020 and note and approve the Annual Progress Report for 2014 to 15. Can I have a show of hands, please? Those for? Right, thanks, members. That looks as if it's unanimous. Thank you. The recommendations are agreed. Right, we move on to item 10, which is delivering Corporate Plan 3, the Council's 2016-2017 forward-facing improvements plans. Alison Ward, Chief Executive, can you present your report for us, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a fairly short report, but about a very important document, which is the Council's forward-facing plan for 2016-17. And the report asks members to approve that plan so that we can take forward our Corporate Plan 3. There's been a lot of discussion already this morning about Corporate Plan 3. It is an important document because it will shape the strategic direction of the Council for the next few years. And it came into effect on the 1st of April. During this financial year, 16-17, there will be service plans are developed for each of the service areas, and this will be the way in which we will ensure that the corporate plan priorities are delivered, that they're monitored, and that they're reported back to members appropriately. And the service plans have been used to populate this forward-facing improvement plan. So the plan will then contain key areas for improvement for this year coming, and the activities and measures that we need to put in place to make sure that we deliver. Now, this may sound a little process-led, and indeed it is in many ways, but we have to be sure that members can be certain that the priorities that they have set for the Council are actually being delivered in reality. We're obliged by law under the local government measure for Wales of 2009 to put together a forward-facing plan, and we need to publish that as soon after the commencement of the financial year as possible, hence this report coming to you today. And the progress against the plan will be reported to citizens at the end of next year, in October of 2017, when we will be able to look back and see how well we've progressed against those priorities. So 5.2 in the report sets out how the objectives should be captured in terms of short-term issues. I won't go through those. I'm sure members are familiar with those requirements. And I think it's important to say that continuous improvement doesn't mean we have to improve everything all the time. But what we've chosen as priorities, we must strive to improve in measurable terms to ensure that you can see that your strategic intention is being carried out. I'm sure all members are very familiar now with the corporate plan and the 3 priorities. I think it's very heartening that we only have 3 priorities. Members will know that we're in a very difficult financial situation. If we have too many priorities, then those will mean all things to all people, and we won't be able to focus on what we can do with the resources that we have available. So our 3 priorities are a clean and green Torfaen, raising educational attainment, and support for Torfaen's most vulnerable residents, as we've already been hearing in our report about the equality plan. And I think it's very good that we now have a different way of setting out our corporate plan this time. So the Council sort of says 3 things on each of the priorities: what we intend to deliver, what we plan to support, and what, importantly, we will expect residents to do to help us drive progress in these areas. I think in the past we've probably said, here's what we will give to you residents. As times have changed in terms of the resources we have available, we also have to have a bargain, if you like, with the public as to what they can do to help us to achieve our priorities. So these, as I said, these 3 key statements will then help us to link back against our key tracking performance measures to make sure that we're delivering against the forward-facing plan. Now, an important piece of legislation that members, I'm sure, are also aware of is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is now in force, and 6.6 of the report sets out those key goals of that legislation, and 6.7 of the report sets out the sustainability principles. These may sound like big strategic words. They're very, very important, because we are expected under this legislation as a council now to deliver everything we do within the framework of these goals and sustainability principles. And there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes by officers at the moment to try to align everything we do in terms of planning and delivery of our services to these goals. And the idea behind the Act is that we are future-proofing what we do now for the generations that are to come. So it's a very important piece of legislation. In terms of consultation on the corporate plan and therefore the forward-facing plan, it's a member-driven plan, and rightly so, but obviously important that members have formed those priorities on the basis of consultation with residents and stakeholders. And as a result of the need to do this, there have been 31 separate engagement sessions held across Torfaen in numerous venues during November, and nearly 1,000 people were consulted as part of that process. And that included some, very importantly, I think, children and young people. And the result of that, the overarching result of that consultation of those residents was that there was an overwhelming preference for the three priorities that are now in the plan. So whilst it's a member-led plan and members decided what to put in that plan, it's been informed by the views of our residents. The priorities were then drafted through a member working group. There was an engagement with full council on the 15th of December, and of course the plan was then adopted by full council on the 26th of January. So very much a plan, and a corporate plan, and therefore a forward-facing plan that is owned by the council as a whole. So members, I hope that you will feel that this plan is a good way for you to be assured that we will be delivering on our priorities. Of course, all questions are welcome. I think if there's questions about the service areas specifically, the service chief officers are here to answer those plans, and I will do my best to answer any plans about the corporate aspects of the plan. Mr Mayor, the recommendation is to approve the forward-facing plan.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a comment, really. I accept that we're doing all we can to consult with our residents in various forms, but are we satisfied with the number of participants who got involved with the consultation? It's very, very important, all the aspects of this consultation, but I feel that the number of 1,000 is very, very low compared to the residents we have in Torfaen. Are there any plans that we can improve the situation?
And again, Richard Edmonds will come and answer that question.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I think we share your views that we would like more people to engage in these things. I think what we've demonstrated this time is a fairly significant improvement from the numbers that have engaged previously. We are up to around 1% of the population. We have learned from previous exchanges, and we've started to take the consultations out to where people are, rather than expect people to come to us. We'll continue to refine those processes over coming years, and ideally with members' support we'll be able to get those numbers up even further. Ultimately, though, it does come down to individuals' choice to participate with us. I'm comfortable this time that we've done a heck of a lot to try and engage right across the borough.
Thank you, Richard.
Right, I've got Councillor Wellington's indicated they'd like to speak, then I've got Councillor Rees.
I simply wanted to congratulate Tom Roberts and the Chief Executive. It's an excellent report. I also want to thank Anthony Hunt and also the scrutiny that played a big part in arriving at the final report. So it's first class.
Councillor Rees and Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, it's just to follow up to Ed's comment there about the 1%. So I'm just asking for reassurance that is 1% a statistically valid sample on which we can base a decision.
I'm not a statistician, so I can't answer that question in terms of statistics. I think the importance is that this is not a decision which you are getting a mandate from the public. It is a political decision to choose these priorities. You are asking the public to inform that debate, but you don't need a mandate from the public to decide what political priorities are.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, very much so. On the issue of engagement, I think we've done the right thing in trying to improve it year on year. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're getting nearer the point where we can be satisfied with that. I think going to where people are, like the markets, shops, libraries, leisure centres, is the right thing to do compared to trying to start sort of standalone meetings where often very few people turn up, and those who do maybe aren't representative of the wider community. It's always difficult to get people engaged on strategic issues as opposed to sort of more reactive issues, because of course people have got busy lives, and unless there's a tangible thing they can see in front of them. And very often with strategic plans like this, it's not quite so definable. But that's something we can always continue to build on. I think the work we do on social media as a council, engaging with people, is actually recognised throughout Wales as being, a good example of best practice. So I think people do have the chance to get engaged and involved. And it's encouraging to see that the exercises that were done showed that people share the general priority areas that we've put forward here. But just to assert what officers have said, those are the priorities that we've put forward as council and are reflected as by the public, and that's a good thing. But it's not a case of just sort of relying on that work to come to priorities, because they are something that have been politically shaped. I'd just like to thank Alison and officers for the report. It's good to see things pulling together, both of the last two reports in council. I think given the resource context we're working in, I think all the strategic levers of the council have to be pulling in the same direction. I think that's essential. So it's good to see that. The other comment I'd like to make is, since sort of the publishing of the corporate plan, there's been a fair bit of sort of interaction backwards and forwards from the public about how we can take these ideas forward, some examples of where we can work better together with groups. And I welcome that. Obviously, a corporate plan is something that is forward-facing, just like this plan. It's about what we can learn to do better and more effectively. And I think that sort of ongoing consultation with the public about examples about how we can work better as a council with them is very much welcome. So this is the next stage, really, of the practical implementation of that strategy, and I really look forward to seeing this fleshed out in further reports, right down into the very sort of practical and operational elements of the council that we talk about. It's essential that we don't just have this sort of strategic plan sitting up there like a cloud and then everything else going on regardless of that beneath. These things all need to be linked together, otherwise it's not worth having the plan in the first place. So I'd like to welcome the work officers are doing to make sure that happens, and I think that's something we can keep an eye on as members, and that's not a party political thing. That's something as members that we can point to officers to say, how are we delivering on this? We can ask questions going forward as results come back and see if the areas that we've made extra investment in, for example, are bearing fruit. That's something that all members in this room have a right to do, and I look forward to that dialogue going forwards.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
At risk of jumping in here again, I like the cleaner and greener Torvine one because it's something we didn't have in the last plan. I can sell that and have done, because when you talk to people on environmental and neighbourhood matters, it's such a nice little one. And it's so simple, but very deceptive, because underneath you as officers can put a lot, and us as members can talk. And certainly when you talk to members of the public, which I certainly have over the last time this has been out, you can say, clean and they get it straight away. It's such an easy one to work with. And hopefully you can take that forward and put a lot of things there, because I don't know who came up with it, but it works very well indeed. And it's easy. And I hopefully this plan will, you can use it really well.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a general question, really. This is the third year of investment in the 21st Century Schools programme, and obviously, as the report outlines, the capital programme is dominated by the work that we're undertaking in Torvine on that. I wondered if I can get an update on how far along the road we are with that, and when that is likely to be concluded. And on the bottom of page 143, second point up from the bottom, and I, along with a number of councillors, was involved in various scrutiny meetings looking at different aspects of this, but a new thing's been come to my attention. There's an investment of $722,000 for the development of a waste facility to enable in-house bulking and baling of recyclates to get ready for selling on. I wonder if someone could give me a bit more information on that, please. I mean, it's just been reported in the Welsh News recently that councils are actually seeing a reduction in revenues from selling on a recycled waste because of what's happening in the global marketplace. The prices of various commodities have come down. So perhaps a bit more commentary around that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. I'll ask Nigel if you can respond to the first part of the question, then Duncan, if you can answer the second part, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll do the 21st century schools. We're in the band, what the Welsh Government called Band A, so that's our the schools in the poorest condition. That Band A comes to an end in 2019, so we're quite a way forward. We've got the two largest considerations coming. That's around Cross y Ceiliog and around Post 16. But once we're through 2019, there'll obviously then be Band B. And I know Welsh Government have started dialogue with local authorities about what shape would Band B be, how much contribution local authorities would be putting in. I would suggest we're quite some way away from, across Wales, 21st century schools being concluded.
Thank you, Duncan.
The item that Councillor Bevan you referred to is the bulking and baling, subject of a Cabinet report earlier on this year. Basically, we're looking to bulk and bale all of the plastics that we collect. We understand that there is elasticity in the market, there's movement in terms of price, and at the moment it's going down. However, there is a confidence here in that selling of the product will be on a Wales-wide basis, which will hopefully enable us to gain the best price. I think that answers your question, unless you've got another one.
Sir Cunningham?
Can I just make a comment just to add to that, because obviously we were all concerned about the price of recycling going down, but as far as we were concerned here in Torfaen, when we took out a contract with our current contractor, we agreed on the price that he would pay us at that time for the term of the contract. So it hasn't affected us at this moment in time because we're still getting the same money that we agreed to do under the contract.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Any further questions, members, before we move on? No? Right. Right. Right, the recommendation is on page 133 of the agenda. We are asked to approve the forward-facing improvement plan for the 2016-17 financial year attached to the report. Can I have a show of hands for, please? Right, can I have a show of hands against, please? Anybody abstaining? Thank you, members. Recommendations are agreed. We go on to item 11, which is annual scrutiny review. Tom Roberts, Senior Corporate Improvement and Scrutiny Officer, can you introduce the report for us, please, then hand over to the committee chairs in turn to present their elements of the report. Are everybody happy to take questions at the end after all chairs have presented their reports? Yep. All right then, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, members. Hopefully, you'll all be aware now of the annual scrutiny report. This is the third year that we've brought this report before you, so hopefully you'll be quite familiar with it. Scrutiny plays a key role in three aspects. It holds the executive to account, it challenges performance, and it has a key role in developing policy. Hopefully throughout the report you will be able to see how we've discharged this duty during each cycle. During the last year, we've consolidated developments we've made during 2014-15 and made several others. We've developed our self-evaluation arrangements. In June and July of 2015, each committee took a report looking at the recommendations they've made, and we've updated that report during the last few months as well, giving members an insight into the progress that service areas have made in developing the recommendations into tangible improvements. Following member feedback, we've improved the way the Joint Scrutiny Committee operates. We've taken the feedback and we've moved from the more formal setting of this council chamber into looking at workshops where members and officers feel much more relaxed and get a lot more out of it. During the course of the year, we've also included a public engagement strategy into the Council's scrutiny handbook, and during the next year, making this public engagement strategy will be a key driver for us as officers, as well as the chairs and the wider committees. We intend to work with the Torvine People's Panel to really get them involved in the scrutiny process. I'd now like to hand you over to the chairs. Well, I know want to say a little bit about the scrutiny during the last year, and as the Mayor said, if you could save questions till the end. So I could hand you over to Councillor Mandy Owen.
Thank you, Tom. The Cleaner Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee has continued to have been extremely busy this year and has undertaken extensive work scrutinising a wide range of topics identified at the visioning session, which include a range of topics from the review of the library service and the impact of previous recommendations made and whether the timescales and processes were appropriately completed. I'm not going to go through each scrutiny activity, as is a report at the end of this council agenda, which include the topics, and a more detailed report of each meeting held is online on the council's webpage. Scrutiny has been carried out with the citizens' interests in mind, and continued webcasting has enabled the committee to be open and transparent, and recordings of the meeting can also be found on the webpage. All recommendations made throughout the year has either been considered or accepted. A lot of hard work has been put in, and I'd just like to thank all committee members for their time and commitment in attending both the pre-agenda meetings and the full committee meetings. I'd like to thank Catherine Turner, Support Officer, Scrutiny Team, and the demographic service team involved in the process for all the support and hard work given. Also, thanks must be given to all the invitees and multi-agencies who have contributed during the past year, which has enabled effective scrutiny to be carried out effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. The next chair, please. Councillor Mills.
This year, the committee has worked extremely hard and has scrutinised a number of key issues. We had made numerous research visits to service users, third sector organisations, and engaged with many external agencies. We have made a number of recommendations, most of which have been accepted. I would like to thank the members who have supported the committee, officers, external stakeholders, and the many invitees from within and external of the Council who have supported our work this year. May I take this opportunity to personally thank the scrutiny support officers, Helen Deacon and Karen Mayo, for all their hard work to ensure the continued success of the Healthier Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. I'll have Councillor Colette Thomas next, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to present the report of the Learning Community Scrutiny Committee. As members can see, we have also been very busy during the year, looking at various topics relating to our education service. I would like to thank members for their attendance at the meeting, and I would especially like to thank members of the Schools Monitoring Committee. Members will be aware that we set up a small committee 12 months ago, where we actually go into schools and visit schools, and then they come back into the chamber for a meeting. This involves an awful lot of work additional work for members, pre-agenda and obviously the school visits. And I would particularly like to thank Councillor Carron, Councillor Kemp, Councillor Jeffries and Councillor Seaborn for the extra effort they put in during those visits. Also a big thank you to the heads and the chairs of governors for making us very welcome at those school visits. As said previously, all our meetings are webcast and members can look up the meetings and the minutes on the web. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We'll have Councillor Stuart Ashley's committee next, please.
Well, I'm going to be brief. That's my joke, by the way. No, seriously, I'd like to present the Resources Corporate Overview Scrutiny Committee report. And this year we've looked at energy, Welsh language, workforce planning, and just recently you heard the presentation of it, the strategic equalities planning. As said by my colleagues, you can read fully on the website and see the transcripts. I would like to thank my colleagues because without their full input we wouldn't get anything done, and they've been very good sessions indeed most of the time. We also went out once and had a look at Llanarafon Manor and school in terms of energy management. That was interesting because you wouldn't know that a building as old as the manor had a very modern piece of kit sat in the back of it, the air pump. It's fascinating. I think members found that quite an interesting visit. So we do practical things like that, and we sit there and we have some very good witnesses and invitees, the Equalities one, CAB and the unions input into that. So scrutiny to be meaningful and you know, has to have a lot of people put a lot of energy into it, and obviously the report writers, the people that present that from management to us, obviously. And the questions we ask, I think that everybody is very good-natured about this, and we get a good input into this, which is what scrutiny is about. I think, and the results speak for themselves. You get good scrutiny, you get good results, and that's part of the process. I'd like to thank everybody involved, especially Rebecca and Grant, who put up with my chairing it, and the results speak for themselves, and Tom there, who's, you know, as well. Oversees the whole thing. Thank you very much indeed. It was a brief report for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley, for that very brief report. Right, we move now to Councillor Robert Kemp, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The committee has had a very busy year in delivering a full and successful scrutiny work programme, all of which have had a direct link with the citizens of Torfaen, covering austerity, reviewer services, housing and collaboration. Currently, 4 area topics have been scrutinised, with a further 1 to be completed before the annual general meeting in May. Unfortunately, this year, overall attendance of councillors attending committee meetings has particularly been disappointing. However, acknowledgement must go to the proportion of committed committee members who have indeed attended meetings and in turn have produced good, thorough, challenging scrutineering, resulting in sound recommendations being made to executive members. Hopefully attendance will greatly improve in the next year. At this point, what I'd like to do is basically highlight a council member, that's Councillor Norma Parish, if you like, who's attended basically all the scrutiny committees, but also the pre-agenda meetings. And the pre-agenda meetings are extremely important. If it wasn't for Councillor Parish attending, it would just be the scrutiny officers and myself. It would be amiss of me not to mention the support and guidance that I, as Chair and committee members, have received throughout the year. Therefore, I would like to thank all scrutiny officers and supporting staff of the Democratic Services Department, especially Mrs. Leanne Skellett and Mrs. Helen Deacon, and not forgetting Mrs. Jacqueline Tranter, who has stepped up into a new temporary position of scrutiny officer. As true scrutineering could not take place without the input from our critical friends, collaborative partnership representatives and specialist invitees. On behalf of the committee, may I thank everyone who has contributed to the process, especially as they would have shown commitment and have given up their valuable time. I look forward to seeing a full complement of committee members at next week's Scrutiny Committee meeting, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Right, any questions, members? Councillor...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's not a question, it's a comment, if you'll allow it. I'd just like to thank all the chairs for their scrutiny reports. They've worked tirelessly over the municipal year, and I think it's been a very valid service. But I also share Councillor Kemp's comments in regard to attendance at scrutiny. We all know that the scrutiny function is very, very important. And I am a bit alarmed at the number of attendees. I realise that some people are ill and that they can't attend, but I am concerned going forward and hope that these figures will increase.
Thank you. Councillor Moorby.
Yeah, same topic really, attendance, but before I talk about that, just want to endorse the sterling work of Norma Parish, who I saw within the Scrutiny Committee we both sat on, doing a huge amount of work to make sure that it took place and took place properly, and I think Councillor Kemp's praise is well justified, so thank you for that. What I would like to address, though, is this question of attendance, where, you know, quite rightly the attendance of councillors is included in the report, and quite rightly, but the attendance figures, as Councillor Evans has pointed out, do sometimes reveal a lack of commitment, perhaps. What we don't yet know, of course, is the reasons for non-attendance, which hopefully will be resolved now that we've got a system due from the next council a year to be introduced, which will actually record reasons. And many of the reasons for some of the absences, I'm thinking of Councillor Pam Cameron, for example, will be clear that she has been ill, and that was the reason, and entirely understandable. What we don't show either is the attendances of co-opted members of the scrutiny committees. I'm a big supporter of having those co-opted members on scrutiny committees. I think they give us sometimes a touch of reality, which sometimes we don't see from within these chambers. But I think we ought to have those attendance figures, not necessarily for public consumption, but certainly I think the chairs of committees and the appropriate officers within the scrutiny service should be monitoring that and reporting back to the organisations which have nominated them, because it's important that the external voice is prevalent within scrutiny, and sometimes that doesn't take place if they're unable to turn up. Obviously, I know in one case illness was the factor, but those reasons obviously again are understandable, but I think that's something which we ought to be looking at in future to try and make sure we get full value from, I think, a very potentially valuable commodity, and that is the external view of experts in their field in relation to some of the scrutiny activities we undertake. Thanks.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Cunningham next, then Councillor Hunt.
Can I particularly refer to the Cleaner Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee? I think that it's been an extremely useful exercise throughout this year anyway, with not just as a scrutiny committee to scrutinise, but also as a sounding board, which has been great helpful to me anyway when there are decisions one has to make that you need to have other opinions of. And I think that is a tremendous value. Other issues I think that need to be highlighted is in the recent budget. I think the particular Scrutiny Committee for Cleaner Overview and Scrutiny Committee come forward with, I think, 25 concerns relating to the budget. And we were able to go back and we amended 22, I think it was, of those concerns. And so that was an extremely useful project. But I think we've got challenges in front of us for the next 12 months on that particular committee, where we'll be looking at our street scene review, our partnerships with RSLs and many other partnerships with other outside bodies. So we've got a very busy year in front of us in relation to contract services or neighbourhood services and the Cleaner Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. But my compliments to and thanks for the help that they've given me.
Thank you, Councillor. Next I've got Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Yowell.
I'd just like to thank the members who took part in the budget workshops, not really because it's my job to thank you, because you don't need my thanks, but because I thought they got the balance right between being inquisitorial and holding, the proposals to account and being constructive as well. And I think that's exactly the right balance. Scrutiny's not just there to fire bullets, but neither is it there to be a patsy to us. And I think that's a good thing that you got the balance right. And I think we can point to real results that came from that. 20 of 23 recommendations taken forward. The budget was better in this council as a result of the scrutiny process. And I think looking at a lot of the questions that the likes of the Welsh Audit Office ask us, I think that's vital. We can show quite clearly that scrutiny wasn't just there after the event, it was there to help shape decisions and make them better. So thank you to all the members who took part in that, and I look forward to doing that process in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Yule.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Just a very brief thank you for the report, very comprehensive, made good reading. Just a question really, how are we advanced in remote attendance? I know it was talked a lot about a year or two ago.
Just a short question from left field there, Councillor Haynes. I think it's fair to say we're no more advanced now than we were. I've not yet put anything to Council. I've not been under any pressure to put anything to Council. If it's something that Council would like to consider, then it's something we can scope out, bring a report back and take forward if necessary. I think it's probably fair to say that the discussions we've had at Democratic Services previously have been mixed in terms of support for and support against remote attendance, but if that's something Council would like us to do, we'll bring forward. Perhaps it's something we could, with the Chair's agreement, discuss at a future Democratic Services Committee meeting.
Councillor Yule.
Thank you. 2 points, one general and one more specific. Generally, I think that when it's done well and done properly, scrutiny is not only very, very useful, it's vital. I'd like to think that in the last year or so, there has been a noticeable improvement in the quality of the work done by all scrutiny teams. But I'd like to pay particular attention to the education scrutiny, not just the general broad scrutiny team itself with some of its co-opted members, but more particularly the subgroup of scrutiny. Both of these forums, in a sense, have played their part in coming out of special measures, us coming out of special measures, and certainly the subgroup of schools improvement has played an enormous part in that particular role. And the success that we've had in the education service during the last 2 years has owed quite a considerable debt to that particular subgroup. But I'd like to end by congratulating all the members of the education scrutiny, particularly the half a dozen or so that regularly attended the subgroup, chaired very, very admirably by Colette Thomas. But let me finish on this note that repeats, if you like, the point that I made at the start. When it's done well, scrutiny is exceptionally good for the health of our council, and I believe that in the last couple of years, scrutiny is now performing as perhaps it should do. I'm a little bit concerned, as other members who brought it to the Council's attention about attendance, because at the end of the day, if there is a reliance on the same cohort, small cohort of members of any scrutiny team, then that scrutiny team isn't going to function as well as it ought. And it's a testament to the work that's been done by those who regularly turn up, that they've achieved the success they have. Just think what kind of success they could achieve if there was full attendance or fuller attendance at every scrutiny meeting. And that's something that we all need to consider.
But I understand also as well that we're going to start publishing from today the reasons for non-attendance to the meetings. So it's not starting next week, and it's actually starting from today. So any other questions, members, before we move on? No? Right then. The recommendation is on page 170 of the agenda. We are asked to note the content of the annual scrutiny review for 2015-2016. Can I have a show of hands, please? 4. Thank you, members. That looks as if it's unanimous. The recommendations are agreed. Right, we'll now move on to agenda item 12, which is the Learning Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee appointment of a new statutory co-optee. Tom Roberts, Senior Corporate Improvements and Scrutiny Officer, can you present this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning again, members. I'm going to attempt to be even briefer with this report. A vacancy has arisen on the Learning Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and that vacancy is the Welsh Medium Parent Governor position. This is a statutory co-optee position. The EAS were asked to contact the relevant governing bodies to seek expressions of interest to fill this position. We have now received an interested nominee. Her name is Lisa Bowen, and she's not only a parent governor, but she's also the chair of governors at Ysgol Gymraeg Panteg. I therefore recommend her nomination is approved.
Thank you. Any questions? No? But then the recommendation is on page 206 of the agenda. We are asked to note the procedure followed and approve the appointment of Lisa Bowen as a new co-optee. 4. Yep, that looks unanimous. Thank you, members. Recommendations are agreed. I will now move on to item number 13, member question time. Councillor Rees, would you like to ask your first question?
Yeah, this is for Councillor Yowell, Executive Member for Education. Are there any children in receipt of free school meals attending Torvine secondary schools using the cashless system and not having a proper meal at lunchtime when they are at school?
I thought when I first read this question, Jeff, it was innocuous and easily dealt with, but like all your questions, there's always a bit of a sting in the tail. I'll try to deal with it in what I'm guessing may be one of several lines of pursuit here. An advantage of the cashless system is that all pupils utilise it to access their school meal, and by all pupils I mean not just FSM but non-FSM as well. Entitlement to the free school meals is loaded automatically onto the system, which effectively means that customers then have funds to purchase foods of their choice. All pupils can choose to take up a meal of the day, a meal deal, or purchase single items such as paninis, sandwiches and salads. All these options are healthy meal compliant. However, while all FSM pupils are automatically loaded onto the system, we can't guarantee that they take up their entitlement. So if the question seeks to ask whether there is scope for pupils on FSM to use their entitlement to buy junk food, then the answer to that is resoundingly no, because the system doesn't allow that. If the question asks whether pupils on free school meals do not take up, or some pupils do not take up their entitlement at all, we can't guarantee that. But we are in the process, in the Education Service, in the process of writing an evaluative report on the pilot of the cashless system, and that is one of those issues that we intend to look at.
Yeah, this is for Councillor Hunt, Deputy Leader. Please can the Deputy Leader confirm that trade union representatives were consulted with fully during the development of the procurement strategy 2016-19?
Councillor Hunt.
Our procurement strategy and policies incorporate many of the issues raised with us by the local trade unions as a result of our continuous engagement with them, such as our policies against blacklisting, our support of whole life costings, sustainability and so on. In addition, the Council uses and will continue to make use of the new provisions of the Public Contract Regulation of 2015, which have been welcomed by the unions. We will continue to work in partnership with our staff and trade unions, not just because we think it's the right thing to do, but because we believe that working with our staff and valuing their role and their representation is a more effective way to provide local services in the longer term.
Thank you. For a supplementary.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. Given that only around 60% of the council spend is with Welsh suppliers, and that the Welsh TUC's campaign Better Jobs Closer to Home argues that government contracts should be awarded to help poor areas like Torfaen, wouldn't a target in the region of 75% spend with Welsh suppliers be more appropriate?
Councillor Hunt, would you like to reply?
I know we're working with the Welsh Purchasing Consortium to look at those fairly recent changes in the rules that the TUC campaign refers to. So certainly I'll be willing to look into that and to report back to him when we get a satisfactory reply.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I will go on to agenda item 14, date of next meeting. For your information, members, the next council meeting is the annual council meeting, which will take place on Tuesday, 17th of May 2016 at 5 p.m. in the council chamber. We move on to item number 15, which is Cabinet Decisions, 22nd of March 2016. Members, the Cabinet Decisions start on page 207 of the agenda. There is no challenges to any of the decisions. Do members have any questions about them? Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Usually I don't, but it was something that caught my eye. I wondered if it would be possible for me to ask Councillor Hunt, the Deputy Leader, about the decision that was taken concerning the disposal of the old railway station at Station Road, Griffithstown, on the bottom of page 209 in the report. It mentions that the decision has been taken by the Executive to allow the Dean Forest Railway to dismantle the building at its own cost. But there was an alternative offer received by us of £50,000 to acquire that. Given that we're looking to maximise income, can we get a bit of clarification on why that offer was rejected and why it was decided to donate the building free of charge?
Councillor Hunt.
Okay, happy to do that. The offer of £50,000 was for a portion of the land. It wasn't for the building specifically. There was also another offer for the the land, including that the £50,000 was offered for, but wider than that, for £120,000. So we couldn't have accepted both of the offers, if you don't know what I mean. So if we'd have taken the £50,000 offer, we'd have had a potential patch of the land that was landlocked and wouldn't have been able to been accessed, therefore potentially, going into a state of disrepair. So I agree with him. This was a difficult decision to take because the £50,000 offer would have kept the building in use as a cafe, and that would have been a good thing. However, it would have had this knock-on implication of both losing the £120,000, leaving us open to challenge on that, and also having that patch of land that would have been going spare with no potential access. So it's quite a complicated decision, quite a difficult one, really, not one that any of us took lightly. The other point I've made that at least the building will be used by that railway company in railway use. As I understand it, the building was offered to the Glenavon and Pontypool Railway Company, but unfortunately they don't have the funds to use it at the moment, or the potential use for it, because they've already got their station buildings up and running. So I agree that in an ideal world we would have been able to do something that satisfied both applicants, because I believe the £50,000 offer was made in good faith by someone who had a good plan for the building, but unfortunately the two things couldn't be done together.
Thank you very much for the clarification, and I was pleased to hear that the building use was offered locally first as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Moby.
Yeah, nothing to do actually with the Cabinet, but I do want to take the opportunity to just remind most members that former Councillor Agnes McGill died recently. Her funeral was earlier, within the last week. It's normal that we would stand in memory of a former councillor. Perhaps it was more appropriate that, because she was a humanist, perhaps it's more appropriate that we deal with it in a civil way rather than with the pastor saying a prayer. That's certainly the way I think she would have preferred to be remembered. But I didn't want to let this meeting pass without actually acknowledging the work she did, both as a social worker within Gwent County Council and indeed later than that, and as a councillor for the Coidiva ward up until 2008. And I'd like that tribute, really, I think, which all of us who knew her would back up, to be recorded in the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Moby. What I'll do, once we finish this item now, before I close the meeting, we'll just take a minute's silence, just in her memory. So, if you're all okay to note the Cabinet decisions now, members? Right, thank you, members. Those decisions are noted. What we do now then, we'll stand in memory of Agnes for a minute. Thank you, members. Right, so this is the end of the council meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance and contributions today. And can I just remind you before you leave to sign the attendance register and personal interests form if you've got any. Okay, thank you, members.